something like money?
Welcome to another episode of Practice Prosperity. We are joined by Dr. Alonda Alloway. She is a licensed clinical social worker. We're going to touch on a sensitive subject about job insecurity. There's a lot of shuffling of the deck when it comes to workers, what opportunities are out there for them, and that can cause a level of insecurity that we are going to speak on today. And we're going to talk about how Alonda has grown her business, how she strategically has almost super served her client by providing services that she feels like will give them a great impact. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Alonda Alloway.
Thanks for having me.
So, if you don't mind, please introduce yourself, your firm, and the type of clients that you serve.
Okay. So Dr. Londa, I am the owner and one of the mental health therapists at Loudon Counseling and Coaching. We're based out of Sterling, Virginia, but we can service clients all throughout the state of Virginia virtually. And some of us have license in other states, like I'm licensed in DC and Maryland as well. You said what type of clients do we serve? A wide range. We provide services for mental health, physical health, and financial well-being. So we have therapists and psychologists for testing. We have a licensed broker on site. We have a CPA on site, and we try to bring in different services for physical health. We used to have some in-house services there. We don't have that anymore, but now we just partner with people to provide those type of services.
I like it. I like it. Well, let's just hop in on the deep end, if you don't mind. So when you're in the Virginia area and people think of DC, they think about government contractors, jobs that usually pay a good rate and people are able to live a great lives. Now, with different administrations and different cutbacks, there's a lot of job insecurity out there. What are you seeing out there? And let's dive into that more as we go on this conversation.
Okay. Yes, the security level of having a government job has changed drastically, right? We have been in practice it'll be 8 years this summer, or fall. And over the years, because we're based in Northern Virginia, we have a lot of government employees and contractors who've had very stable lives, live very well. And then, yes, change in administration has shook up a lot of things where I've had a lot of clients who were once nice and confident and, pretty secure with their future are now like shells of themselves because they don't know what's going to happen with their jobs. They don't know if I lose my job, where am I going to be hired? For those who have lost their job, who's going to hire me? Who's going to give me this type of salary? And they have all these different people who've lost their jobs during this administration who are out in the workforce competing for the same job. So it's a whole different ball game when it comes to even applying or even before having that security of that nice federal job before now, right? And like, okay, I can leave here and get something else. But now there's a plethora of people you're competing against. So, the confidence level has dropped a lot, even in those who feel like their job is secure. Mm-hmm. Don't really feel that it truly is secure anymore. There's no rules.
Speak to how people sometimes tie their value to the organization they work for, the title, and the income they make. And like when that's pulled under you quickly or unexpectedly, or sometimes was shown a million times, but they didn't react. Like, what is it like when you tie your value to those things?
Mm-hmm. Funny you asked that. I just met with a new client this week who said they're not sure they are anymore because they've always introduced themselves by their title of their job. Mm-hmm. And so when you take the title away, they don't know who they are. And so they're having and have been having problems in relationships because they don't know who they are outside of that employment piece, right? So when you strip that away, truly, people are like, okay, what do I do? I don't know what I like. I don't know who to talk to. I don't have people in these spaces anymore. What do I do? And they're like completely lost as like children, starting over.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's big. I overheard a conversation, and they said when you talk to kids, you probably need to pivot from asking them what you want to be when you grow up, because we think of
Mm,
title, doctor, attorney, and it's nice and it's able to put it in a box, and there was some value to that, but more to how do you want to change the world? Because
mm,
nobody can. There are very few people can take that away, that aspect away from you, and I think that's a pivot we probably need to make in society.
true. I am, well, under the Loudon Counseling and Coaching uh, umbrella, I also have a collective called Soulful Socials. And so we try to have events where people can make connections because in this area, Northern Virginia, there's not a lot of places where like Black professionals specifically can go to fellowship with others outside of their jobs, right? Without going into DC or going into Maryland. Some people just want to stay home or near home. So we created this group, and one of our rules in that group for our different events is when we're bringing to get people together, you can't say what your job is, and you can't ask someone else. And so living in the DMV area, and we did that perfectly, specifically because living in the DMV area, that question is one of the first three that people ask when they meet you. And depending on your answer, depends on how they treat you, right? So you're the CEO. Oh, hi. Nice to meet you. Oh, let's connect. But you're the custodian. Who else is in here? Right. And so that custodian may have something that you may need that would help you better yourself as a person or your business or whatever it is in life, or just have a great connection as a friendship. And so people just automatically tune people out because of that in this area. So we're like, nope, take that away, make a connection with somebody, and then later on, that connection works, then you can find out what they do you know
Why do you believe um, people have become so transactional like that? Who you are, what's your title, what you can do for me. We're not valuing the other things of integrity, hard work, doing what you say you're going to do, and I think that has negative effects.
Mm, I do as well. I think it's our society in the US,
Mhm.
and our goals are striving for money and excellence and doing better. And when you go to other countries, people aren't asking what you do. They don't ask each other what they do. They may not have a career, they may have a job, they may have a hustle or something, but they're happy in what they're doing and not trying to, excel in the rat race like we do in the US. Um, and I think that's just woven into our society and our environments here.
That's so tough. Now, of course, I work in the financial services industry, so people come to me when they have different issues, and job insecurity is becoming a big thing. Um,
Mm.
what do you say to somebody who may need to take a step back in career to move forward? They assign their identity, their title, their position. That area may not be as hiring as much anymore, or not being to be hiring them, and now they have to take a step back to something what they would consider a janitor job, or something that would say as a entry level job. Like, how do you help someone get to that point to be able to build back up? Because that's a challenge I'm
Some people don't want to humble themselves, and some people have to be humbled,
having.
right? So you can either lose your job and not have that high six-figure income for you don't know how long, and stay in your million something dollar house because it's still, understand you're there, you're comfortable, but how long is that going to be sustainable, right? So some people may have to cut their losses and maybe move out of the house for a while, rent it to somebody else, maybe even sell it and buy something, possibly cash, but at a lower cost, just to be able to maintain a lot longer than staying in that house that you can't afford. That's now building up these debts that even if you do get a job, now you owe 75,000 in mortgage, you know. So sometimes we have to humble ourselves and think more about ourselves versus what we're looking like in society of, oh my gosh, they had to move out of the mansion, versus, okay, they did what they needed to do and they get able to maintain and sustain themselves.
My opinion is they're worried people are going to treat them like they have potentially treated other folks in a similar situation. And
Falling
and,
down
and
that
that
ladder.
out down that ladder. And that's a
Okay.
scary thing because now they
Yeah.
have to stand on a merit that of who they are. And that could be scary.
Yeah, it can. Yeah, it
Um,
can. Especially if you haven't treated people well
you know,
while climbing that ladder,
mhm,
you
mhm.
know, because there are people who, the phrase you treat the janitor just like you treat the CEO. And there's people who live by that. And hopefully most people do. But we know that there's some who don't, who may have been down there with the janitor. I shouldn't say the janitor. I keep putting the janitor like he's down in the floor. But sometimes those janitors actually make more than people who we think have these great salaries, right? And so they may be even living more comfortably. Maybe they don't have any debts. Maybe this person who has the high salary has a whole lot of debt. This person doesn't. They're able to have a lot of discretionary income, while this person who's flossing doesn't have that. So, we can't put the person down with a particular type of status. But yeah, if someone has treated people who are not on their level, as they say, pretty poorly, it's going to hurt falling down off that ladder. So that humbling experience is going to be pretty hard for them.
You deal with a lot with folks who potentially have lost confidence. So, for example, let's say maybe I lost my job or I'm underperforming or my boss has making me feel like I'm inadequate for the position. When somebody comes to you and they say, I just don't feel like the same person I was. I don't feel like I can do what I used to do. How do you address that confidence drain?
Mm. Um, I had a few clients who went through that with this under this new administration, actually, who were like facing promotions at the time, and then that they know they were going to get. I had a few people who were in those situations, um, more educated than all the other applicants, more experienced than all the other applicants, um, had already been kind of given the go ahead that this is your position. And then all of a sudden, with the change of administration, now here's somebody else who got that role that they were supposed to have. And then they found out like that this person doesn't have the education, doesn't have the experience, hadn't even worked in this field before. Where did they come from? Type of thing. So, um, for them looking at their confidence drop, how do you bring it back up? It's very difficult, especially when sometimes they feel like even if knowing that I am good and I know that I know this job, what does it matter when this guy can walk in and, do whatever? Um, but in working and building back up that confidence, I have them look at their strengths. And oftentimes, when looking at the strengths of someone who feels defeated, they don't recognize a lot of the strengths that they do have. So I have an exercise I do with them. It has like a bunch of descriptive words on like a chart or whatever. And I have them go through line by line, picking out the words that they think are strengths for them and explain why they think it is a strength. It always starts off very difficult. There's like four words on each little line. And so they'll usually start off saying, like, well, none of those. Well, maybe one. Well, and as we go further down the chart, their confidence builds up. And then they're like, oh, yeah, that one. Because back in so and so, I did that, And so then you see the confidence rising with them in just this simple activity that I love doing. And then at the end of it, I often point out some words that they didn't pick from the list that I've seen strengths in them. Because oftentimes we have strengths that we don't recognize as our strengths because they're ordinary to us, extraordinary to other people. So yeah, that particular thing to do, helping someone recognize, build back up that confidence is looking at those strengths.
You let me know, I'm extrapolating here, but given our earlier discussion, it almost seems like folks aren't showing their strengths outside of work. Therefore, they're not receiving that confirmation from their social network. So it results in the only people who approve you of your talent becomes your boss.
Mm.
Therefore, nobody's reminding you, hey, Randall, you're really good at this. Hey, Randall, I appreciate when you do this. And you're not, if you're only getting that from one party or one entity, that puts yourself at a emotional risk, I believe.
That's true. That is true. But, that speaks to the importance of having a social circle that is good for you. Because you can have a social circle, doesn't mean they're good for you,
Yes.
you know? Um, you want to be around people that you can uplift and they uplift you as well. They should want to make you better and you should want to make them better without being judgmental or critical or jealous or sabotaging of each other. And so when you have those good people in your circle, you do get that, hey, thanks for so and so. Hey, you're good at that, versus when you're not in those type of situations.
And I think it also speaks to that sometimes I don't think we spend time serving mankind as much as we probably should.
Mm.
Because a stranger could give you a compliment. But if all you're doing is I consider work, and I see this with the younger generation, I only think of work within what pays me.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a big challenge.
What you were saying there about helping other volunteerism is a great humbling experience as well. Right. We all go through things, and sometimes we think whatever we're going through is like the worst thing in the world. And then we see somebody else who's going through something, and then we're reminded, oh, wait a minute, it wasn't the worst thing in the world. There's somebody else who has something. So sometimes those volunteer experiences kind of help ground people in the reality of this isn't the worst there is. The world doesn't end tomorrow. You can still bounce back from this, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I know a personal experience. I did a volunteer turkey event where we give away turkeys to those less fortunate. And the difference between urban and rural poverty is significant. If you go to a
Mm,
rural area, their level of poverty, their living conditions, you go into a house that hasn't had heat in months, and you can feel it like the walls are cold. And then you
mm.
take a step back and you're right. You're like, is what I'm going through that bad? And you probably shouldn't think that way, but that I think that does allow you to get that perspective. So in this new environment, how are you advising people navigating their professional lives in a healthy way? Because I don't, the way we've been approaching it probably isn't the most functional way, but how do you advise clients? Let's say you receive somebody and let's say they're 25, early in their career, and you really want to give them a healthy mentality on how to grow their career. What are you advising them to do?
Well, I'm not a career coach, and career stuff is not my specialty at all. But when I see these people going through these situations where now they're on edge about what to do, um, one of the things that I always ask them is whatever you do for your profession, can you do it on your own as your own boss? Um, because I think, even our school systems teach us to be a worker.
Yep.
They're not teaching us to be entrepreneurs or have that entrepreneurial mindset or even think out of the box besides going to work and doing all those things, right? So, some people have professions where other people have left their agencies or companies or whatever, and they're having their own brand or company or whatever, and they're thriving. And that person is often like, well, I do know somebody who can do it, but I don't want to do all that. I just rather find somebody. When you have the skill set, you can get people around you to help build what you want so that you can control it and you're not under the pressure of someone else's demands, that's a possibility. Oftentimes, people are very scared to even think about that, though. They would rather to be an employee than an entrepreneur. I get it. It's scary, but it's doable.
Now, I think you're right. When I had a discussion in talking about different, I'm in the business school, so different business professions. An accountant, I was a financial person. Those require a large institution,
Mm-hmm.
given what they teach you.
Mm-hmm.
So actually going into business for myself, you actually had to relearn what business is. Even though I may have a business major, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't really know business. I only knew how to provide a service that a large corporation had to hire me for. I think the
Mm-hmm.
same thing is for the mental health space. They really only teach you how to survive out of an agency or an already established corporate group practice.
Mm-hmm.
You probably also had to learn those business things to operate within your field.
Mm-hmm. I'm still learning. When when I started my group practice, I had no clue what I was doing at all. I had other little businesses along the side, um, along the way that I learned from scratch too. But this was a completely different new realm. And I wrote out this business plan of how I wanted things to go and look and all that stuff. I found a building that was for rent. I said, here's some money. And I made up I'm losing my words, some advertisements so I can get so I can hire some staff. And then I hired some staff and I bought some furniture. And then I was like, okay, what do I do? I'm supposed to have a system? What's a system? What's billing? What's this? I didn't know anything. And I just wanted it. And I just jumped for it head first. I don't advise that for anybody. That was kind of wow for me to do. But hey, we're still in business and I'm still learning along the way. Um, but I've talked so much I forgot what the question was.
That was more of a statement, but let's get into that. Why
Yeah.
did you go into business? It is hard. They didn't teach you this in school. What was that trigger point to say, I want to do my own thing my way?
Should I be honest?
Honesty is important.
Okay, here we go. So there was one day in particular, and along my career, typically all of my bosses, people who were over me, um, had less education and less experience than me. And they were my bosses. Okay, fine. They worked their way up, they did their thing. One particular day, I went to a meeting. There were 6 people in this meeting. There was a table There was three people on one side, three people on the other side. On the side that I was sitting, there were three Black females, all professionally dressed, all had doctorate degrees in different things. On the other side of the table, there were three white women. Nobody was professionally dressed. The highest degree on that side was a master's, and all three of those women were our bosses. And I remember sitting there. There was one woman who people had to keep explaining stuff to her. And I remember at that moment, I looked down because I was like trying to hide my face for like, this woman get this position. She doesn't know what she's talking about. And as I looked down, I'm looking at my outfit. And I looked to my left and I saw this woman in her. And I looked to and that's when it hit me when I looked up and I'm like, wow. The contrast of just this picture is wow. I need to be on my own and make my own decisions and not be under someone who can just get a position because they know somebody or whatever merit there is, when clearly the this table should be flipped. And it was just that one meeting that made me say, okay, I'm done.
Now, I'm a person I was taught at a young age, get your degree, get your certifications, get your licenses, so nobody would say anything. But as I've gone in business long enough, and similar to what you're articulating, I still think those things are important. But how I saw those things are different. Do you see, as a business owner now, your doctorate, your certifications in a little bit of a different light? Doesn't mean they're less valuable, but I think the value you place on them is slightly different.
Licensure in my field is important because there's so much we have to do to become therapists. Beyond the masters is the basics, right? Then we have to do like 3,000 hours in the field. Then we have to take a national exam. And so there's so many steps along the way where people fall off and they had this dream of being a therapist, but they can't do all the hours or they can't pass the exam or they took it 5 times and they gave up already, you know? So to finally get that license to say, okay, I know my stuff to be independent says a lot. However, I do know some people who are licensed who did all those things and still really don't know their stuff. So the value one puts on it may be different when you look at somebody else in that same type of situation, because there are people who are still working towards their licensure who know their stuff more than someone who may already have a license. You know, so it's pretty hard um to pick out for like a client standpoint, for instance. And I was talking to someone about this the other day, where a client may come in and look at like the website and they'll say, oh, okay, I don't want the resident. I don't want the person who's being supervised. I want the person who's licensed. Because yes, that says that person has met all the requirements. But we have some really great residents and some people who are in supervision who have been in the field for decades and they know their stuff. They just now said, okay, I guess I'll get my license now. Let me start with these hours. Okay, I never took the exam. Let me go ahead and do this. You know, so it's hard on the client end to determine if that person is someone they can see or should they go to the licensed person. When someone calls in or emails or whatever and they're looking for a therapist in my group, in particular, I tell them I don't pick out somebody for them. Um, we don't do that. We may say, okay, there's these three different people who specialize in the area that you need a service for. Look on our website and go look at their profiles. I don't say this person's a resident, this has a license, this, I don't say any of that. I have them look at the picture and read that person's information because that potential client knows best who they would feel comfortable with. And it may be a resident who had 40 years of experience, maybe a licensed person who only has 2 years of experience, you know. So I let them decide based on who they can connect with, not the license or the degree or anything.
I see that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I know from my angle, when you talk about growing a business, it really comes down to sometimes results.
Mhm.
If you are getting results from a finance standpoint, growing wealth, that's one thing. But I guess from a clinical standpoint, are people delivering change in which they tell other people about that change?
Mhm.
And the community and the other centers of influence know that person gets results. That's what grows a practice.
Right. Word of mouth.
The degrees and certification, those get you employed.
Mhm.
To me,
Mhm.
it's a different game once you have to actually acquire your own clients or build your own business.
That's true. And that helps with the word of mouth, the results, you know. Um, it also helps kind of determine how much you need to spend for marketing
True, true, true.
because we have some clinicians who really get out into the community and make a lot of networks, you know, and so people hear about them or connect with them or whatever, and then they give out referrals or people who come in and they've had the service and say, hey, when I go somewhere, if I know somebody here, you should check out this particular person, right? And so typically when those things happen for those clinicians, they don't have to market much because their work, their connections speak for them.
Yeah, big fan of birds of a feather flock together.
Mhm.
And yeah, you can do a lot of marketing, but there's something in our world called unqualified leads.
Mm.
Like the idea of the service, but what it takes to execute on it is different, right?
Mhm.
So your practice is set up a little bit different. You combine mental health, financial health, and physical health.
Mm.
Why did you make this pivot? Why did you go outside of the cookie cutter therapist practice?
Well, when I was mapping out my business plan,
Mhm.
um, I wanted something more than just mental health service in the practice. I wanted something that had like stress reducing elements like yoga or something. And so as I was trying to map this out, I was at the library with my partner at the time who was working on he was doing a business plan for a financial business for himself, a for-profit and a nonprofit. And so as he was sitting there doing his, and I'm sitting here doing mine, I thought, you know, people who have issues with their mental health often have issues with their physical health, or people with physical health often have issues with their mental health. And so with those things combined, if I had a business that had those things in one place, that would be awesome. But also, people who have mental health issues and physical health issues, if those things are going on, more than likely they're not taking care of their financial well being. So, if that third element can come in, that little trifecta could be very effective. And so then I changed what I had in mind to from just counseling to that three-pronged approach to make it holistic because in one spot people can go from here to there or we can refer to them and just under one roof.
That's interesting. So now, when you told your other counseling counterparts outside of your practice that you're doing this, like what were they saying? Were they saying, wow, that's great? Or were they saying, that's different? How are you going to execute that? Like, what was the chatter when you were proposing this idea and you began to execute on these different segments?
Um, The people, so I really didn't tell people about
Interesting.
about it until like I rented this building out. It was like, okay, now I really got to do something. So the people that I told were the people that I wanted to either work in the practice or um people that I wanted to help like invest in the practice. So when I spoke to those people, they were all like, okay, that's pretty cool. I never heard of that before. Yeah, I'm on board. So I didn't um approach anyone who said like, no, that's not no. You're doing too much. That's too much in one spot. Yeah. They may
Now,
have behind my back, but into my face, nobody said that.
now the challenge of that is the integration. These are three separate professions,
Mhm.
all have mental impacts, definitely. How did you, over time, how have you woven these things to make less friction? Because that's the pure goal thing. I want somebody to be completely well. I just want to reduce the friction of them having to go out and find these three different services. So, how are you weaving those elements through in your business?
Just simply through referrals. So like if I have a client who, I've had people who say like they were stressed out for whatever reason, all these things going on, and on top of that, I haven't filed my taxes in 5 years. Well, we got somebody right around the corner in this suite who can help you file those taxes and get that on point, right? And so sometimes like our financial people would be like, uh, this new client that I think might need a little something extra, And so the referrals are just made in-house and it's just easy that way.
Yeah, full disclosure, I have worked with some folks. I'm like, you're not well.
Yeah.
Can't speak on it, but there's
Yeah.
something
Here's a card. Yeah. Mhm.
that's interesting. So you have these things, all these integrated. So let's talk about your journey. You mentioned purchasing a home, but I mean purchasing a building for your business. But what was your journey on, you know, finding a space, funding that space? You also said, I think you mentioned you have investors. So what is that journey from the beginning, dropping a seed or idea, and then having to actually manifest these things that cost money?
So I had been writing his business plan for 2 years
Hmm.
and kept talking about it. This is what I want to do, but adding on it, expanding on it, blah, 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 blah. And so again, my partner at the time was like, I'm tired of this conversation. You've been saying this for 2 years. Why don't you just do something? And so that's what made me say, okay, let me go find a building. How do you find a building? I don't know. Let me look. And so I just Googled how to find commercial real estate. And so then I found LoopNet. Oh, all the commercial stuff is here. Let me find that. And so then I I looked at other group practices in the area to see like which cities they were in, proximity, blah blah. Where would be a good space to put something? And then I concentrated on these little three towns and, close to the highway and blah, blah, blah. And then I found a spot exactly where I want it to be. And so that's just how that came about. So I had already just had money on my own that I put towards it. And when I contacted the bank saying I wanted to start a business account, The lady at the bank actually helped me out a lot because I didn't know what I just thought I was going to start a checking account and I'm done.
Mhm.
And so when I got there, she had this guy in the office with us, and she's like, "Oh, I thought I brought him in because I thought he'd be helpful for you." I'm like, "Okay, hi." And so he was from ADP,
Okay.
and I'm like, "What's ADP? What's that for?" And so, he's like, "For payroll services." What? And I'm sitting here like, man, I didn't think about payroll services. I just thought I'd write the people a check.
Yep. Yep.
J- just super foundational. I knew absolutely nothing what I was doing. And so I'm sitting there listening to him, and he's telling me all these things that need to happen with payroll. And then he's telling me the differences between like a 1099 contractor and a W-2 employee, and that there's penalties for drawing those lines. I learned so much in this meeting. And then this banker that I was very grateful for, who brought this guy in because I didn't know any of that type of stuff, right? And so she was saying, well, you need business credit. I'm like, what's that for? So then she connected me with a business credit card that I end up using for like the furnishings and stuff like that. And then before that or around that time or so, I was looking for like business loans because I heard of, people getting business loans to start business. However, when I reached out to all these business loan institutions, nobody was willing to give me any money. They all told me that I needed to be in business for like 2 to 3 years and then show proof of like operating expenses and profits and things like that. And I'm like, but if I need the money to start the business, how can I do that? And so it didn't make sense to me because I've heard of people starting businesses with business loans. So what's the difference from me? So then I started looking at all those type of people who I know who have business loans who look very different from me. That was a wake-up call. How did they get that? And I'm in the same situation, but they got loans, and I was told the same thing from all these different institutions. So what I did was just went to my extended family. I had a PowerPoint. Look, this is what I'm trying to do. This is, I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to hire these people. I need this space, blah, blah, blah. This is how much I think I'm gonna make. Can you borrow? Can I borrow some money from you? And so that's how I got my operating costs from just going to family asking to borrow money and then just paying them back as the money came in.
So, as a service provider, you have a choice. You can start off very small, or you can start off large. It sounds like you start off kind of in the middle. What motivated that approach?
Foolishness.
Honesty.
Just did not know what I was doing. I know I wanted to have a group.
Yep.
I didn't even, I got my license in my independent license in like July 2017. We opened the doors, I think September 1st. So within that little 2 month span is when I did all this stuff, right? Never once in those 2 months did I say, I should probably start off as a solo practitioner and then grow into. Never thought it. I just automatically thought I'll get my license and I'm gonna just start a group. Foolish.
Speak to the, because you're a mental health professional, the stress of going through that. So now you have equity from family members. You may have some personal or some business credit card debt that may have been run up. And the expenses are only going to increase over time. So now you have to get clients to service. Very few people understand what that is like. Can you put some words to that?
Ooh-wee. Okay, master class. So again, I knew nothing going into this. We opened the doors September 1st. I hired all these people. I think I had a staff of maybe like 17 people. Knew nothing. So by the time we started, and by the way, I was working full time as a school social worker while I was doing this. So uh, so I get into the space and I'm seeing there's a whole lot of stuff that I don't know, that I didn't know that I needed to know, right? And I don't know anything about business stuff. So I went back to that person I was in the library with and was like, hey, you know business. Can you help me? So then he stepped in and put like put some things in place business wise. One of them I'm laughing because I can't believe I did this. Um my payroll was Word doc.
As
What's
long
going
as
to use Excel?
well, that yeah, that's funny.
I was just using my calculator and typing it in the Word doc or whatever, right? So he came in and he looked at it, he's like, is this real? This is really your payroll? How are you? This makes no sense. So he put in a system that I still use today on Excel so that I can effectively track the payments, the client visits, and what I'm paying out to my staff. So, um, speaking of paying out to staff, so he comes in and in the beginning, nobody knows who we are. The first day we opened, we had one client though, because someone had found me from years ago when I was working towards my licensure for my hours, and they were looking and found that I had a new place. And I'm like, yeah, that's a good sign. But like the first month, I think we had 4 clients the whole month.
With
And
rent, with staff cost, with electricity for clients. But go ahead.
yes. And so remember the money that I had borrowed from family that I had to furnish this place that I was renting, right? And then the rest of that is kind of sitting there for these expenses. But so he comes in and he says, where's the money to pay the office manager? And I said, oh, she'll get paid from when the clients come in. He's like, what clients? These four? These four people? I'm like, oh, maybe I should have borrowed some more money, huh? So, as that investment borrow money came in, it was very quickly dwindling while our income was not growing to the amount where we needed to pay, everybody and stuff like that. So we unfortunately, I had to let my first office manager go within like months of us starting because there was no money for her. And I didn't know that I actually needed like a bigger stash to be able to pay her. Um, Other things I have learned along the way financially, speaking of the stress of it, was making the most effective decision on how much to pay staff.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Again, he came in, looked at all the stuff it had done, and was like, this is wrong, this is wrong, this, right? And so one of the things that he said that I was doing wrong was I was paying my staff too much. He's like, this isn't sustainable. And I'm like, well, because we pay the contractors, the clinicians on a revenue split.
Right.
So they keep this amount of money, the business keeps this amount, the business uses our little cut, we pay the bills, we, whatever. Um, And there's a lot of overhead that I didn't think about, didn't factor in, didn't know existed. I didn't know what I didn't know. Right. And so without those things in mind, initially I walked in and was like, you get most of your money. You get most of, right? Because I'm like, they're doing all the work. They should keep a great portion of their money. We should just keep a little bit because we're not really doing a lot. Yeah, we are. We're doing a whole lot. We're doing a heck of a lot that I did not factor in initially. Besides the heck of a lot of work we have to do, there's a heck of a lot of stuff to pay for. And even, most people will come into a business and not know about the smallest things you have to pay for. Even the clinicians who are in the building don't know all the things you pay for. Even simple as swiping a client's card is a charge. That costs money. Submitting a claim, that costs money. Getting the claim back, that costs money. Every little thing costs money. And so, whereas people will typically think, oh, you just got rent, you got utilities, and then you're making all this money. Nope. There's a whole lot of operating costs. And so, um, what ended up happening that I'm still living through actually is because I was paying them so much. Um, when there's gaps, that money has to come from somewhere. Initially, the first year, two, or whatever, I didn't even pay myself from the business. So I did a lot of work and I didn't pay myself at all. And I didn't do that because I was still working in the school system and I was making really good money. So I'm like, I'll just put it back in the business. I'm cool. I'm good. I just wanted to thrive. And that was fine for that moment. But then I left the school system to work for myself full time. So now I can't say, I don't want to get paid. I don't need to get paid. Because now I got to get paid. I got to eat too. Right. So again, we're looking at this gap that I'm talking about. So the example I give to people when I'm talking about this stuff is, let's say, for instance, our monthly operating costs are $30,000 a month. The income that comes in, let's say it's $27,000 a month. And somebody might say, y'all doing really good bringing in 27,000, but the operating expenses are 30,000. Who's going to cover that gap? Are my clinicians? Hey guys, each of you going to chip in and not take some of your pay to heck no. You better not ask them either, right? So that gap has to be filled somewhere. We have two choices. It comes out of my pay or it comes from a business credit source. So that credit card that young lady told me about initially got some use in it because I'm paying my staff all this money. Now the business is bringing in this much from the splits, and we got to make this much of the operating costs. So I got to turn to that credit card that she told me about that I would probably need. So if I'm dipping into the credit card to make up that gap, we know credit cards, you pay a certain amount, but they add an interest on it. So you're paying. So initially I used to pay it off every month. But then here come another month where there's a $3,000 gap again. So now I got to go back to that credit source. And so this time I can't pay it back this month. So I got to pay a portion of it. Now it's grown some more in interest. And we're doing good. So I'm paying it down. But here come another month. Now this gap is 5,000 because everybody went on vacation.
They don't tell you about that, dude.
They don't tell you
See,
about that part.
seasonality is the thing.
So this credit card keeps getting, this balance is bigger and bigger and bigger. And so now you get to the point where this so big, This credit card got a limit, right? So what do you got to do? You go get another credit card. And so you're doing the same type of thing, but you're trying to pay them and you're building, and it becomes this big cycle of trying to pay down these debts while trying to bring in revenue. And so in some cases, where you may see a business owner doing a whole bunch of things, and you're like, they're doing too much. They're trying to be greedy, because I heard that before I
Mm.
started a practice. Somebody was talking about another group practice owner. I remember specifically. And I was with this group, and they were like, this person who was an owner is they're doing way too much. They're just so greedy. They're so greedy. But on the other side of it, when I became, I was like, now I see why that person was doing that stuff, because they needed more revenue. It wasn't about greed or wealth. They're just trying to keep the lights on. They're trying to keep the business afloat. So, um, so the stress for the business owner is just that, making sure you're at least even keel every month, because some months there won't be. Holidays are great for some businesses, and some businesses is very bad for them.
Yeah, cancellations. I had a dentist on, and they were like, I am just used, he had his own office. I am used to something breaking. I become numb to that. The toilet, the chair, the whatever. Something is going to go out that I have to address. And part of his growth as a business owner was to be at peace with
Mm.
that reality. And that's hard, man. That's just
That's hard. Speaking of cancellations,
hard.
so as a consumer, if you don't make your appointment and then that place charges your cancellation fee and you're pissed off because you ain't come in, and they should understand that you had let me tell you,
Mm.
as social workers, we're just so forgiving, and it's okay. You didn't come in. I drove 2 hours to be here to give this appointment, and you didn't show up or call me, but it's okay. Right? So we used to do stuff like that. Well, one year I counted up all the cancellation fees that we did not collect because it's okay. It came up to $26,000.
That's your credit card.
$26,000. And I broke it down by clinician, like, this is how much you missed. This is how much you missed. From that point, we were like, okay, nope, no show. They didn't tell me. Nope, they didn't call it. Nope. Your time is valuable. And if you're charging by time, like clinicians do, we spend time preparing for the sessions. We spend time getting there. All this stuff. And then if someone's like, oh, no, I won't come, there's somebody else who was on a waiting list or whatever that could have filled in that space for you. But you didn't notify us within a specific time. So now we can't reach out to this person, and we lose that income. So there's a lot of practices whose cancellation fees are the same exact as their regular session fees. We don't do that. Um, we we only charge $75 for our cancellation fee. And maybe that's something I shouldn't be doing. Maybe I should charge the whole amount for the fee, but we don't do that.
I know, similar to you, when I have an adverse situation happen to my business, usually the lesson learned, it becomes more profitable and you attract the right person. So right now, you are less likely to attract a person that is, let's say, a little bit more finicky with their time because there's a cost to that. So you're beginning to attract the right person. And because they're showing up, you may actually be serving them more effectively because they're showing up versus somebody who will cancel 3 sessions, show up one, cancel 3 sessions, show up one. So you're actually just making a better environment for everybody, I believe.
We found that when we take pro bono cases, those are the ones who often will not show up
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
scheduled, will cancel the last moment, will do all these things that someone who's paying out of pocket or using their insurance and a copay won't do.
Yep.
And so, it's sad because when we take on a pro bono case, something in our heart is said, okay, this person can't pay me, but I want to see them and I want to help them anyway. And then for that person to turn around and say, your time's not valuable to me, that
Something came.
hurts. Oh, I couldn't make it. Oh, I forgot about it. Oh,
Was that on the 14th? Oh man.
oh, see you next time. Maybe. Right. So that was a lesson learned. Don't do pro bono anymore. And so some of the clinicians who, like all of us at some point, have said, okay, I'll do a pro bono because I really want to. And then we all end up learning this lesson. So some who do have clients that actually can't pay anything, don't have insurance, whatever, it still won't be a pro bono case. It'll be a very reduced rate or something. Um, but we found that pro bono is just it's not a good feeling when someone doesn't value what service you're actually providing for them.
Yeah, and no shade to those individuals, but it just, like I said, it's a lose lose around because they probably feel bad that they missed the meeting as well. And so why set up scenarios where everybody's frustrated?
Mhm.
And I think that's important. So now let's touch a little bit more on the finance part. A lot of business owners have troubles or sometimes forget to pay taxes. How over the years have you managed to pay taxes? Because you just don't have income taxes. You have payroll taxes, and those things have to be paid. So, what was your strategy of taking care of those little things, or big things in your case?
In Virginia, we also have property taxes on things that we've already bought. So you're like, how? Even our cars, we have to pay tax on our car every single year, even though you've paid it, and it's not cheap. So, in the business, you have to pay taxes on everything that your business owns every year. For our payroll tax stuff that comes out just automatically, I don't know, the accountant set that up, so I don't really know about that. I don't see it. Kind of like direct deposit with like your health insurance comes out, you don't really know how much you pay until you don't have that job anymore and you have to pay your health care on your own and you're like $100 when really you were paying that already and you just didn't recognize it. So I don't know about that case, but in the case of property tax for us in our county specifically, like we know that it's due a certain month of the year, and we just have to keep putting the money aside for that in order to just get it done.
Wow. And so, and what about personal taxes from like business distributions? How do you allocate money for that to pay that at the end of every year?
Um, I'm not sure. The accountant does all that stuff.
Understood, completely understood. How do you handle, I guess, funding your lifestyle through your business? Is it through all W-2 wages? Is there a K-1? Is there a distribution? How do you earn money for your business and then fund your lifestyle?
Got you. So I'm a W-2 employee of the business.
Gotcha.
I don't do distributions. I used to. I can't remember when that stopped or why that stopped. But now I'm only W-2.
Gotcha. 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 Now, but you still have to pay profits that the business. makes taxes, correct?
Hmm.
Um,
Yes.
and I guess I'm assuming your accountant probably manages that payment. Okay, makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
So now that you primarily do W-2, the other thing is you have to reinvest the money back into your business. What are some of the best ROIs you've had as far as, yeah, I have profit now. I'm going to deploy that into my business. Where have you seen a good ROI, return on investment with that?
Mm, that's a good question. And that just lets me know that you are really in the financial space that is over my head. I do not know. Uh, you know what? I would say my outside entity of the that I was talking about earlier, the soulful social collective group that I have where we do outside events where people can connect. I would say that. So in doing those events, we have up like the QR code to our business. Some of the clinicians, depending on what the event is, some of the clinicians come to it and speak. Like we recently had a relationship and legacy and wealth building seminar or whatever. And one of our clinicians spoke there. And so they were able to kind of get our name out there as a practice, and then people come back and so things like that. Also participating in like vending events, being an exhibitor, where people can, it's kind of like a marketing strategy for us, but it brings visibility to potential clients for us as well.
Why do you see it's valuable to get out there and get involved in the community? Like, what does that bring back to your business, you feel?
um the community engagement piece is important, very important to me, which is actually why I named the business after the county that it's located in. Um, I did not do it on purpose so someone could confuse it with like a county agency or whatever, but I wanted to say, like, within this county, we are here to help whoever needs help in whatever way that we can help them. So, yeah, so getting out into the community is very important because we're here for them specifically. It just so happened that the pandemic made the opportunities for us grow even further to where we can reach the whole state and other states, through virtual practices. But initially, we started off just to be able to work with those in Loudoun County.
I like that. I like that. So this is Practice Prosperity. We're always curious. What does a prosperous business look like to you? What does winning? How do you define winning? Maybe in the next 5 years for your business.
Uh, Winning would be sustainability. There's, I don't know the stats or the whatever people say, like most businesses fail between the first 3 years or something like that. Kind of, it's not a high number. Exactly. But we have made it over that hump that I've heard of 3 years or 5 years or whatever. We're going on our eighth. And um winning, I guess, would be to still be in place, to still be operating.
Every year, I agree. I do feel like it's a best blessing to say, "Hey, I'm still here.
Mhm.
I'm still serving, and I'm still in my right mind while serving."
Correct.
The things we
Correct.
deal with.
I'm not a client, and that's winning. I'm not my own client.
You'd be like, tell one of your clinicians, pull up a chair, let's talk.
Right. Tell my client, I'm switching places with you today. I'm taking the couch. You're in this chair.
Oh man. So if somebody's listening to say, hey, I love the concept of weaving in both health, mental health, physical wellness, financial responsibility together, and I want to engage with your practice, what is the best way for them to reach out to you?
Through the website, if you go to, so it's broken down into different tabs. There's a counselor's tab, there's a testing tab, finance, insurance, blah, 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 blah. Going to whichever tab that's needed, everyone's profiles are on there and their email addresses are directly under each person's profile so that you can contact that person directly. There's an email link and there's a phone number that's like on the main page, but we prefer that people reach out to the person they think they will connect with most instead of going through the main office. We don't even really check the phone that often. The outgoing message also says, please don't even leave a message. Find the contact the person that you want to work with directly, and that's the best form of communication with them.
Awesome, awesome. Any final words? I feel like your journey, you kind of, it's a funny thing when I play golf, I say I play the whole course. I mean, I'm in the woods everywhere. And it sounds like you have been in the woods everywhere with starting your business and growing your business. Any advice to somebody wanting to start their business?
Do some research and don't just jump into it.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
Like I did. I don't regret my experiences because I learned so much that I needed to know.
Yeah.
I learned it the hard way, but I know the front end and the back end because things that failed or people I put in place to help do certain things and then they didn't. And then I had to go and figure out how to do those things. So yeah, just do some research. You're not going to know absolutely everything that you need initially, and you will learn things along the way, but to at least go in with some foundation of knowing what, how, when, who to reach out to if need be.
Yeah. And talk to people like yourself who's done it and are more than happy to share it.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. Find a mentor.
that's humongous. So, well, thank you very much, Dr. Alonda Alloway, licensed clinical social worker. You were honest, you were transparent, and I think you at the beginning served a message that people are actually going through today. So, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Take care.
All right. You too.
Feeling the pressure? You're not alone. I'm Randall Lavery with Diesel Wealth Management, and I specialize in simplifying wealth for those who are near retirement and business owners. We'll create a plan that fits your unique needs so you can actually enjoy the wealth that you built. We consider our firm results driven with a touch of fun. Ready for clarity? Click the Learn More and schedule your free discovery call. Let's build the financial future together.
The more I know, the more money I can make.